Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the APAN Routing Working Group meeting at APAN57. My name is Brenna Mead. I believe Francis was going to chair this session, but I don't see him, so I will just do it myself, I think. So I just want to start with, for those of you in the room, how many of you have heard of the Routing Working Group, have worked with the Routing Working Group, or are on the mailing list? Okay, so about half the room. So sorry for the one half of the room that has heard this spiel a few times. Since it's only half the room that knows what I'm talking about, I'm going to do a little bit of an overview of what the program is, and what the group is, what we do, and why we do it. And then I'm hoping that this will be sort of a discussion, an overview of what we've done in the past 2 years since the Routing Working Group has started, and then a discussion about where we should go next, what our goals for 2024 should be, and how we can engage this community specifically, and other members of the RNE community a little more effectively, in order to keep the group going. It has quite a bit of momentum, but we want to make sure we keep that momentum and continue moving forward with the group, and maybe discover what our goals are for the next 2 years, and what our ultimate goal for the group is as a whole. And you know, if it's still of value to this community in the next, 1, 3, 5 years. So feel free at any time to ask any questions. I think there's a mic going around. If we don't have any discussion, I might just call on you. So sorry. Those of you that know me, I will call on you if there's no discussion. So the International Routing Working Group. We established this group to create a community to work on international routing issues to improve. The goal of this group is to engage network owners, operators, and NRENs to not only reactively discuss and address ineffective routes, but mostly the goal is to work proactively across the community to systematically create policies to prevent routing issues from happening. And I'll go into what types of routing issues we see. We have 3 chairs currently: myself, Brenna Mead, International Networks at Indiana University, Warwick Mitchell from RNet, and Hans Adelman from Indiana University. So why do we have the Routing Working Group? Routing or RNE networks have been really effective at resilience and redundancy. I think the network engineering sessions that we've been in the past couple of days have shown those systems that are creating that resiliency, and the cooperation that we have in terms of redundancy and backups. Many of today's flows between institutions, however, are routed in ways that are not efficient. That can be because of old policy, new links coming up, and no changes in policy. Various things can contribute to why this is happening. For those of us that are network engineers in this room, we know that we're very busy people, and we are generally worried about operational issues, so outages, day-to-day work. So there isn't a lot of time to think about performance unless a customer comes to you complaining about performance, and then you react to it, and then you try to solve that performance issue. But I don't think for most network engineers within our community, performance is necessarily the first thing on their mind. They just want it to work, and then they want to move on to the next project, unless a specific use case or customer comes to them with complaints. However, in the research and education community, this is a challenging thing, because research and education often relies on performance. Data transfers rely on minimal latency, low RTT, and maximum speeds, so that these research collaborations can happen effectively and efficiently. And I think we've done a very good job at collaborating, but sometimes we don't do a great job at end-to-end performance throughout our community. Because of this, we all know that routing, BGP for many of us just works. You can configure BGP to get you somewhere, and it may not be the right way, but oftentimes, or the best performance, but you can probably get it to work, and you can kind of move on. Which is what a lot of engineers do. They bring things up and then they move on to the next project. But when this happens, old routes may not work well with new networks. So we're seeing a lot of new 400G networks. We're seeing a lot of changes in our global GREN architecture. And sometimes a mixture of those old routes and new routes doesn't actually work as effectively as you think as the you think they are. The traffic may not be taking the path that you think it's taking, or you never actually looked at it because it worked. And new routes may not work as planned. So we see this sometimes when 400G links are brought up. We see people think that traffic's being moved over to those 400G links and they're not, or traffic that they think should stay on old links isn't staying on old links. And there's all these architectural issues that come with changes in architecture of the GREN. And I want to make sure that something that we focus on within the routing working group is keeping research traffic on research networks. The reason research networks exist are because we have different goals. We're looking at performance engineering, bandwidth, community coordination, and deterministic behavior, whereas commodity networks are not necessarily concerned about performance. They are doing DOS protections. You don't necessarily understand the architecture. It's not as public as the RNE architecture is. And there's also a lot of traffic shaping that happens, firewalls, things like that, that are not necessarily conducive to research and education networks. So research networks are engineered to support science. Commodity networks are not. And a lot of our community, over time, we need to start thinking about, sometimes commodity networks are cheaper. They are easier to get. They're cheaper, and they don't have the same expense or the same coordination efforts as research and education networks. But we really need to make sure that within our community, we are identifying and reminding people that this science traffic is better off on our research and education networks because we have tuned these networks to be the most effective for science collaboration. So we need to keep the science traffic on science networks. And that's part of the goal of the routing working group, along with a few other things. So some of the challenges we've observed over the 2 years of this group started in 2021. So this will be our start of our third year. So we've seen asymmetrical routing. So a source to a destination takes one path, and then on the way back it takes a different path. This isn't necessarily bad, but sometimes you don't even know what's happening, and sometimes it does cause performance issues. One route is more efficient, faster, has better data transfer performance than another route for a variety of reasons. It could be taking a commodity connection. It could be using a network that's not tuned for science. It could be taking the one path could be longer than the other in terms of the AS path, things like that. RNE data that takes a less efficient route around the world, affecting performance. So Europe to Asia routes traversing the US. So you go from here to here, but you're going around the world. Or the other way, so Africa to Europe routes traversing the US. You can think of a variety of other inefficient routes that could be taken throughout the world just based on geography. And we all know that distance is important in terms of efficiency and in terms of speed, latency, things like that are important to the research and education community. Like I touched on earlier, RNE data that takes a commodity route when an RNE path is available. New RNE links that are being removed or added, but routing does not adjust appropriately. So we're seeing a lot of this with the emergence of 400G links across the Atlantic and domestically across Europe, the United States, and other areas that are up to 400G. And then misconfigurations causing routing loops. We've had actually 2 routing working group cases that were routing loops related to data transfer performance. So they would just sit in a loop and traffic would go nowhere. So what are the goals of the routing working group? Obviously, the members of the routing working group are engineers. So our engineering focus is to document these possibly erroneous routes. I say possibly because, like I mentioned with asymmetric routing, it's not necessary. It could be a reason for that. It's not necessarily bad if traffic doesn't get routed the same way both directions, but we'd like to know why. And we'd like to make sure often that you as the engineer, that was on purpose, that was what you meant to do, and that there's a reason for that if it is occurring. Identify the teams to address them. So within the routing working group, we have cases come in. We address those cases, then we find network owners, network operators, members within the routing working group community to take the case on, work on it with each other, and then we check in with them monthly. The routing working group meets monthly. We try to rotate the meeting. So sometimes they're in the morning for US, the morning in the US, and then the next month they're in the night for the US. That means that we can accommodate our Asian partners, our European partners, and our Australian partners well, they do their best. So then we check each meeting, we check in and we go over the cases that we're working on. We see what progress has been made and we try to make plans to move those forward. We also present tool talks at some of the routing working group meetings, which I will go over in a little bit. The second focus, which I think will be the focus for this year a little bit more, obviously we will still continue to look at routing cases that come into the group, but one of the things that we want to do as a group is a policy focus. So best practices, detailed routing policies for paths, including preferred backup paths, and verify if policy is being followed. One of the goals I think for the routing working group as sort of a new network engineer, not new network engineer in the routing or in the international community, but you know, someone who doesn't have 30 years of R&E engineering experience, I think it's important that we make sure that we educate some of our younger engineers, our newer engineers, about why things are configured the way they are. You know, because sometimes engineers will come in and they'll look at something and go, I don't understand why this is this way. And there's some historical reason that traffic is being routed that way. And you don't understand why. And I don't know if you all have done this, but you try to fix it and you get in trouble. So we would like to do some policy things to determine why some of these things are happening and really do some education for some of these network engineers that are coming up, because I think, and I talk about this a lot, I think within our community, we sort of have a bit of a brain drain happening. So lots of people are retiring and we are not educating the new engineers, the new workforce effectively on some of the principles of R&E networks, some of the reasons that we do things, whether that's policy, politics, you know, relationships, different elements of coordination. So what I want to focus on this year is a little bit more of these best practices so we can get those out to the community so we can start educating people on why we do things the way we do. Because if we have a better understanding of why we do things the way we do now, we may be able to make things more efficient or change them as time passes, you know, and as new engineers come into this field. So what I want to do with this meeting is really have a discussion about 2024 and beyond. We've had some great success in terms of our routing working group cases. We've had a total of 22 cases and 20 of them are solved. We still have 2 that are sort of unsolved due to new links being procured and engineering time. So many of us are just very busy and do not have time to necessarily look at some of these cases. We have an average of 29 participants per meeting. There's 170 people on the routing working group mailing list, but we only have about 30 people that attend per meeting. That's actually pretty good in terms of the time zone differences and things like that. There are a lot of elements of this group that make meeting and having good discussion challenging. We've had pretty diverse engagement from engineers throughout the NREN community. So we've got partners from Asia, Europe, Australia, partners from all around the world within the routing working group that are participating. We have an average of five tool talks per year. I'm hoping to get that closer to 6. So do sort of half tool talks, half cases, 12 months. We'll see how that works, but an average of about 5 tool talks per year. So at Internet2's Technology Exchange in 2023, I had a similar discussion with some of the members that went to that meeting. And mostly I wanted to discuss the type of best practices and documentation that we needed as a community. And some of the things that came out of that were that the community is looking for common definitions. So what that means is there were a lot of engineers within that group that were new, as I mentioned, new R&E engineers, new to this community, who didn't know what a lot of these words meant. What is an NREN? Why do we do this? What is APAN? What is APNIC? How do all these collaborations work? What is their relationship to each other? So some common definitions would really help all of us have sort of standardized communication within the community about, especially for those newer engineers to the R&E community, to understand what's going on. And admittedly, when I was started in this community, I had an entire whiteboard of acronyms because I didn't know I was very confused in almost every meeting about what each acronym meant, who was involved in that, and why I was supposed to care. And so I had, in my office, I had a whole whiteboard of common definitions. Common practices around accepting routes. This sort of leads into a later discussion. I'm going to talk about RPKI and some other routing security initiatives around the world. And then one of the other things that came out of that conversation was a survey on the adoption of RPKI within the community. And this actually came up in the network engineering session yesterday. So, how many of us are implementing RPKI? What are the challenges you're seeing? How far have you gotten in your implementation, and what is sort of holding you back from a full implementation of RPKI? So that was just some of the things that came out of these similar conversations at Internet 2's Technology Exchange. So right now, we are using tools that are within my organization and pretty common to me. So these tools are NetSage and PerfSonar. So NetSage is a Grafana-based measurement tool that looks at flow data. And then PerfSonar, I think many of you know, is a measurement tool that, that the community uses to determine performance and look at end-to-end performance. But I think there's more we could be doing. There's more tools we could be using. One of the tools that we talked about last year that we need to follow up a bit on are RIPE Atlas probes. And I believe you wanted to talk a little bit about your probes. Thomas, can you poke him? You wanted to you wanted to give an update on your RIPE Atlas probes, so I think this is a good opportunity. You have 5 with you? Okay, I will put that out into the routing working group Slack channel and say if anybody's interested. Do you have a goal for those probes? Do you have a, is there a ideology about why you brought them and who you want to get them out to?
Want to as many networks as possible. Yeah, we want to have the probes installed at as many networks as possible, because we want to do measurement all across, the globe. And so the priority would be given to the networks which do not have probes yet. So, when you approach me, I would check whether, your network already have one. If you already have one, then maybe we should give it to someone else. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And one of the things we had an engagement last year with RIPE Atlas, and we started to do a little bit of, they're attempting to create an RNE dashboard for RNE RIPE Atlas probes so that that would help us look at how routing is being done across the world. But again, that requires, as he mentioned, that requires more of us install RIPE Atlas probes or get the ones that we have actually working and into the system. And we also need to work on, so this year, one of the goals of the routing working group is to re-engage with RIPE Atlas, see where they're at, and continue that engagement. One of the issues that we've seen is that Peter from SURF was doing a lot of the RIPE Atlas engagement. So we will need a new advocate for that engagement. And so if anyone has an interest in helping us really get more, really work on that project, really work a little bit more with RIPE Atlas, I'm looking for someone to sort of engage with them and really carry that project out. And I'll talk about this a little more, but there's a lot of engineers on this list, but I can't do everything, and I'm looking for people who want to empower some of these issues and get more involved in leading some of these things. And I wanted to pose a question to this room. Are there any other tools that you all use when you are troubleshooting your routing, troubleshooting issues within your institution that you think that we should highlight, that you think that we should be using to look at erroneous routes, to look at routing issues? And if you want to talk to me after this, if you're not comfortable talking now, feel free to, I'm always around. Feel free to reach out, but we're looking for new tools or tools that you guys are using in your day-to-day operations that you think could help with this problem. Does anyone have any off the top of their head? Okay, that's okay. So the next question that I want to pose is, how can the routing working group more effectively engage your NREN or institution? So over the past 2 years, a lot of what's happening is I am going out finding cases of routing issues that I think don't look right, and then sending them out to these NRENs, finding engineers to work on them. But I really would like this to be a more communal opportunity. You know, I would like the community to come to the group with issues, not just me, because admittedly, I don't work for your NREN. So when I find an issue and I say, hey, does this look right to you? You know, and sometimes they're like, yes, that's intentional. But if you all as NREN members and community members come to the routing working group with an issue that you know is an issue, that's a more effective and more efficient way to collaboratively work on these routing issues. So does anyone have any ideas about how we can more effectively engage your network engineers that work for you, for your NREN, for your institution, so that it's not just me going around telling people, hey, I think something's wrong with your network? Because I don't know about you, but when, you know, as a network engineer, I don't really want to get random emails from people saying there's something wrong with my network. You know, most of us have a lot of, we take ownership of our networks, and we don't, you know, it's hard to tell a network engineer something's wrong, and we're all incredibly busy, I think, and it's very challenging to just, you know, sort of go out and say, please look at this. Does anyone have any ideas for how to more effectively engage you all?
This is Busun. I totally agree with the point that we should settle out. I think we can think about the two levels. One is someone involved in and operated the NLAN, or someone with managed their own institution networks. In Korea, in our cases, we are supporting so many the research institutes. We provide their connection and their operation sometimes. The thing is, all members, all our institution cannot join this kind of group. So it means someone should could be some proxy to handle the other issues. So what I think is just first point is do we know the right person who can manage their network or the outlet? The kind of the list of some members we should know about that. And others is the all NLANs we are promoting their science project. That is a kind of engagement perspective. Sometimes our scientists know about who is the real operator over each institution, or sometimes they want to know about the engineers or the scientists in the institution or some NLANs. So what I heard about in so many years ago, not many years ago, and 10 years ago, someone wanted to make this some kind of the scientist database like that to match their IP, or who is the real engineers, real scientists for some science domain. So if we built this kind of something with that is match the scientist group and IP address, that is could be the help to our communities. I don't know this kind of work is we should delete or not in this kind of group, but we can think about that because the IP is definitely matched with that some routings, and routing also is so related to the IP and the scientists. So this kind of relationship we can think about it. Right?
Okay, I think that brings up an interesting question for those of you that are NREN owners or managers. How many of you actually have programs within your institution that reach out to scientists to talk about performance issues? One? Okay, that's an interesting dynamic. Go ahead, James.
Well, I'm trying to figure out the right way to put this together, because excellent points. One of the things I almost said earlier in the previous slide about tools and things that need to be discussed. I mean, we talked about Metronova, which is like an evolution, a planned evolution to NetSage. I think one of the exciting things about that is it ties back to a science registry. And it's kind of an opt-in activity that's been incredibly valuable. And I think something that needs to have some renewed interest. In fact, it may be one of the most important early stage aspects of NetStage, because it makes a great way to highlight the data sources or experimental locations of data collection that are of value, that puts an IP address to it. And then once you have that IP address, then you can start the process of mapping that back to the AS and hopefully to the engineers that can actually delve into that. And so more broadly to this, I was thinking, early on, I don't know if anybody ever dealt with the INOC DBA, the whole dial by ASN to be able to get a hold of the people know that how to spell BGP, or know how to, what a community string is. But I was wondering if that's something that could be done in the Slack world, right? Maybe in the APAN Slack, a channel per AS of interest. And that would be a way that people who are interested in performance to or from a particular AS could join that channel. And when you have that type of issue where you're wanting to engage to debug, you'll find somebody that's passionate that can go that last mile and connect to the person that can actually do something.
Yeah, maybe that could be part of not practice, like some of the documentation we do as well. We have a number of engineers on the group, but I don't know that we tie them with AS numbers. We tie them in institutions, but we don't necessarily tie any of the engineers within our group to AS numbers, science projects. That's an interesting.
Because once you get that match, you're going to find somebody that knows the right people.
Yeah. And
in fact, I have a challenge.
Ooh.
I think it'd be great just to have a sign-in sheet, especially to help with the RIPE Atlas distribution effort, and just pass a sheet around and have all the ASs that people are representing written down in the room. That may be a big list, but just maybe the origin AS that they're directly with. It may be a good homework assignment.
That's an interesting point, because when we were discussing with RIPE Atlas, the probe, this engagement with RIPE Atlas and the probes, they asked for a list of ASNs that we were dealing with, RNE specific ASNs. And Peter and I put a pretty extensive list together, but it still wasn't quite right, because, many organizations have a number of ASNs, and we found it to be particularly challenging to actually develop that list of RNE ASNs. And so I think Peter was actually working on that, and I need to follow up with him actually to see if he made any progress there. But I think you were right. I wonder how okay, I'll take that. It's a really good suggestion. Does anybody else have any ideas about how we can more effectively engage your NREN, your institution?
Sure. Maybe I'm just unfamiliar with how you currently attempt to engage, but I guess my obvious question is, if a problem is identified, do you have a process to reach out to, say, the NOC for the NRAN in question? And do those tend to be responsive to resolving issues, or is it a challenge?
So we do not necessarily reach out to the NOC. We reach out to the members of the routing working group that are associated with the entities that we saw the problem occurring. So like we've seen, traffic from Indonesia to Japan going through the US. And so we reach out to the engineers within the routing working group that are from Indonesia and from usually NII or SINET, and say, do you guys have time to look at this? We have not specifically gone to the NOCs. So that's an interesting point. But, it's the real challenge is we really want the NOC or these engineers to come to the group versus one person like me going, hey, have you looked at this? Have you seen this? We do have a very specific case process. So once a case is determined, we have a Google Drive and a spreadsheet and a folder for each case. And then we assign engineers to those folders and to that case. And then at each meeting, we go over the progress that they've made in that case, depending on, but that's at each monthly meeting. We also have a Slack channel where some of the conversations are had. Many of the routing loop cases have been actually solved in the Slack channel. And many of the sort of the easier cases, I would say, that are like, oh, this is a routing loop, this is how you fix it, get fixed in the Slack channel. But I think we do not reach out to the NOC specifically, and I think that may be an easier way to target maybe some of the other engineers that aren't part of the group. I think that's a good suggestion.
Sure. Yeah. I'll say I don't think I'm not part of the routing working group. I'd like to be. I'm not sure if anyone else at Scenic is right now. I don't know if you know off the top of your head.
Sana was, but she moved.
Right. So so I should probably join because I've taken over basically many of her responsibilities. So
And what is your name?
I'm Christopher Bruton.
I've
at
emailed
Scenic.
with you before. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll get you added.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Because I'll say our NOC, we're very responsive to reports of these kinds of issues. And if it's urgent, it sounds like the issues you deal with aren't necessarily urgent service impacting issues, but we have, a good team of engineers who know how to deal with routing and BGP on a very kind of informed basis, and our NOC will escalate most of these kinds of routing issues to our engineering team.
Do you find that your NOC, if it's not a operational issue, is very responsive?
It depends. I think the NOC is always responsive, but their response sometimes is to escalate it to the engineering teams who are hit or miss, because we're not. Our engineering teams are not 24/7. We have an on-call, but they only really deal with urgent operational issues. So sometimes the NOC will escalate it right away. They'll respond back to the reporter, but then it might be days or longer before an escalation engineer actually looks at it.
Okay. And traditionally, none of these issues are immediate things that need to be immediately solved. So that's acceptable. That's fine. Do you have anything? Oh, no, you're the microphone guy. Oh, James.
Hope you don't mind me grabbing a mic again. So in the internet too, we have an initiative where we're trying to push better routing, and there's going to be efforts within the GNAG to do the same thing with pushing, RPKI and good documentation on all things routing. And so maybe there's an effort to come together through that. Where there's like heightened attention and detailing from various resources in that effort, and maybe it could be a kind of a crowdsourced activity to find the leaders, the right peer engineer. It's kind of that's the approach that we've been taking, at least within the US, because there's only a finite number of peering relationships that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to translate that into the handful of people that really can do something about that, I think aligning some of those initiatives where you've got the deep level of kind of data analytics that have already been done, and just matching that with the people component. So maybe we can talk offline.
Yeah, I think I know that's something. This is a GNAG APAN working group. So it's both an APAN working group and a working group within the GNAG. For those of you, does everyone know what the GNAG is? Okay, good. I'm gonna take that as a yes. And so I've been trying to figure out within the GNAG in coordination with APAN of how to do some of those things. It seems like within this community, a lot of us are trying to solve these problems, but they're sort of being separately done. And if we could find a way to like aggregate those efforts and find the right people to participate in those efforts, I think we'd be a lot better off as a community and as a GREN. So anybody else on this question? Don't worry, I have more. You'll have more opportunities. So we touched on the best. Oh, yes. Let's go back.
So I'm from my engineering or whatever being from Polymer, so there's no problem at all. But for some engineers in this community might think that so we were saying something like the case something like an issue, right? But it's kind of improvement or the writing cases. So in terms of that, there's much room to be improved in a sense. So in Japan, so from the commercial community, so we have some kind of the introduction of the community for the something like tutorial or workshop or something. So there we could introduce ourselves. So at there, so that they could as not for the issue, but for the improvement of what they are saying. So if they're not recognized as an issue, so that it may kind of not the kind of problem solving mode, but it's not like that in this area. So that's kind of the engagement should be happened.
Yeah.
In a sense.
So that's a little bit of the reason I think that we haven't reached out directly to Knox, is because we want it to be sort of an effort to improve versus tell them it's an issue. I think improve is a better word, especially for and network engineers. But then when you say improve, it's not immediate, and it's not something that necessarily is supported by management as effectively as something operational or any of your large projects or any of the other things that we all engineers within this community have to do. And so, yeah, there's an opportunity to reframe how we're discussing these ways to improve RNE routing versus calling it an issue or something like that. So I think that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So at TechX, I mentioned we came up with a few things that we thought as a community that needed to come out of the routing working group, some best practices. But I will say that I reached out to a number of people who brought those issues up, and nobody wants to lead that charge. Nobody wants to be the person who helps create the group that makes those documentations. I think we see this in a lot of the groups, ANA, AER. I think we have this policy issue across all of these working groups and these collaborative efforts. But what I'm looking for is not only what best practices you think new engineers or RNE engineers should be more aware of, but also is anyone in this room or anyone interested in helping with some of these efforts, coordinating them, leading them, things like that. So we'll start with the first question. Are there any best practice documents or things you would like to see the communities do specifically related to routing that we're not doing at this time? Thomas? Yes.
I'm not sure if this exists, but I would love to see a community string document for all the AS for the NRENs. This is pretty common in commodity peering, but that would be nice. And to answer your second question, we're kind of doing this already in the ANA, so we might as well just expand this. I don't know how we would do it, but I'm open to leading that initiative.
Okay, that is actually helpful. Anyone else? I think that's a really good suggestion. I think we should look at a lot of the things that we don't want to do things the way commercial entities do it, because that's against our mission. Some of the things that happen there are against our mission, but I think they have a lot of procedures and documentation that we could probably benefit from taking a look at. And so that's a good suggestion as well, is just to look at some of the things that the commercial entities do in terms of documentation and seeing what we can repurpose for RNE. I like that. Anyone else? Is anyone feeling especially motivated to work on this with us? Yeah. Okay. Cool. You probably. Okay. Go.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, second question, I'd be interested in being involved. I think not leading the effort, but Thomas has volunteered himself, so I'm good with that. I guess I want to again put the question back on you. Do you have any examples of best practices where documents are currently lacking? I'm just sort of having a bit of a brain freeze right now. I think the feedback
from the community is that we don't have any. That's the fundamental issue,
right?
Or at least we don't have a repository that's useful to put it.
Right. I think I understand that, but what are some? I mean, more informally, best practices arise from bad practices. So maybe another way of looking at it is what are some of the bad practices that you currently see that a document or some kind of standard could help raise awareness?
I think Thomas hit one, the community strings. We don't use community strings effectively within the RNE community, and only only not many people understand what they're for and why they're effective. I know that a lot of things such as AS path, appending and things like that, we need to do a little bit better job of understanding why we're doing manual changing of BGP. But no, I think that's something I'm trying to glean from the community. I mean, from some of the issues we've seen, we've seen asymmetrical routing just based on BGP misconfigurations on either end. How do we improve that? We had one issue that was, and some of the things are political actually, that can't be fixed by best practices. So we had this one case that was internal to Saudi Arabia. We had an institution, a university in Saudi Arabia, doing science collaborations with KAUST. And all their traffic was actually traversing the US to go less than 500 kilometers. And that was actually a political issue because the institution was unable to connect to the NREN due to various things. So the only other option, so BGP did its job. The only other option was a 50 meg commodity link between the two universities. And BGP said, that doesn't make any sense, and took them all around the world. So some of the things we're dealing with, I think, are a little bit higher than BGP best practices and could also be considered, a little on a high level up community best practices. How do we, as a community, work together to fix some of these things that we're seeing that are more, less engineering issues and more human or political issues. So I'm also trying to think about that, which is not an easy problem to solve. I think a lot of our community, some of our technical issues are straightforward. I say this a lot. Not easy, but straightforward. But some of the community engagements and the policy that we have to work around within the RD community is a little bit more challenging. So maybe some best practices or documentation or education on some of those things for new engineers would also be helpful.
Yeah, I think just to add, I think you made a good point earlier about the brain drain or how there's maybe a fewer newer engineers coming in to replace older engineers who maybe have a lot of these practices just ingrained in how they work and how they operate. So I think input from newer engineers like me, I've really only been part of this for community for the past year and a half or so. So I think I've learned a lot and kind of have a fresh set of eyes and I can see things that maybe other people take for granted that give me pause and say, well, why are we doing it this way? Maybe we should document that. So I think trying to engage the newer members of the community and newer engineers, I think is a good approach maybe, because I think they have a unique perspective.
Thank you. That was really helpful. Does anyone else have anything to add? Okay, next one. We do, like as I mentioned, we do tool talks about every other month or so, depending on the community and the people that we can get to come and do tool talks at our meetings. Are there any tool talks that you would like to see that we either repeats of ones we've already done? So we've done perf sonar, the Internet 2 routing integrity project, RIPE Atlas, perf sonar, microdep. We've done quite a few tool talks. Are there any tools that you all are using that you think would be effective? We've also had the BGP Watch project come and do a presentation. We also want to do a little bit more collaboration potentially with that project. But are there any tools that you all think that the routing working group should be using or looking at for tool talks?
Yeah, the network is able to provide router proxy or looking glass. That is excellent to debug as much as possible, before contacting the target routing target network operation center. And the other one is, so how many of you are maintaining the routing repository database or RPSL?
Anybody? Oh.
So if you are able to keep updated, like RADB.net or something like that, then we may be able to guess which network is connected, have the link to the another network or ACE number, and maybe to see this might be the bad routing or good routing. That may not be the definite things, is very difficult to say, but the can be referable in some cases. But yeah, in some cases, the maintaining RPSL description is very hard in some cases, because we may need to include the commodity networks as well. But anyway, that might be one of the good points to start with the network routing trouble.
How many of you contribute to a router proxy or looking glass in this room? Your NRENs do. I know Internet 2 does. You all do. Yeah, it's correct. I think this has come up before is a better list of NRENs that contribute to the looking glass, sort of a survey of the community of who's doing router proxy looking glass, and a repository for those individuals that do, mostly like a single pane of glass to tell you how to get there. Is that something that would be useful to the community for the routing working group to do, is collect some of that data for other engineers that want to get more, to use router proxy or looking glass? Okay. Yeah.
Because some old-fashioned software may have the security vulnerability and may not be acceptable these days. So if you have any experience how to install the correct secure router proxy, that story might be helpful to every other network operators. Thank you.
Okay. We did do a router proxy talk right at the beginning of the routing working group, but I think we could do a repeat of that. That is more about how to configure it, how to effectively use it. Okay. Okay. Anybody else got any ideas of tool talks they would like to see? Thomas, sorry. Does Internet 2 do any training on Insight Console or on how to use that? Because I thought that might be useful to the community.
So we don't do formal trainings as far as I know, but there is documentation on the Insight Console page to walk you through. But I think James may have something to say. There are regular office hours that they actually do walk through.
Okay, maybe that's something that I didn't even know that. So maybe that's something we could get out to the community. Do any of you all have other things as network operators or engineers? Do any of you other NREN operators have things like this, trainings on how to use your tools specific to your external tools to your NREN?
If you can add more like some BGP community in the as a reference document, BGP sake, BGP mon, right? This thing might be really helpful for the research and education's network, as well as the different operator as well, right? The BGP is the it's a different protocols, right? And these more identicals, and it's very difficult to predict these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the part is might be very much stupid as well, right? Once the network engineers maintain this best practice, right? They always follow that great practice so that the internet, the hygiene will be better, right? From my prospect, I think it will be more better to maintain some database or some tools, especially for research and education network, so that will be for easy for others as well.
So this has come up, that type of documentation idea has come up before. And with these best practices, something I think about a lot is, where is the best place to put this? This is a GNAG APAN routing working group. Is that through APAN? Is this or GNAG, or what is the best sort of, again, repository? What is the best way where should we put this information if we make it available to the community?
Yes, the APAN is not because the issue is common to everyone.
Okay.
So GNAG,
Maybe GNAG.
might be this location.
Okay. I think I agree with that, but I just wanted to, is there anyone else who has any opinions about about that? But I think you're right. I think this, especially for those of us that have changed things based on best practices or things they didn't know and broken entire links, I think it would be really helpful to have better documentation but for me, the question is always where. So I think GNAG might be the right place for that. Does everybody agree?
The LinkedIn, the other continent, the country. So I think also I read the GNAG is the best place for
Okay.
the archiving the all other network from other continent, because already we're connected and the researcher was always global scale with what's done.
How many people in this room are a member of another GNAG working group? Okay, I just was curious. Okay, are there any more tool talks before I pose my next question? And I'm sorry to pose all these questions to you, but my goal in the next year is to figure out the direction of this group and again get more community engagement. And I think the best way to engage the community is to ask these questions and pose these questions. So
Just thought of a tool that hasn't been mentioned, the Manners Observatory. If you're a Manners participant, then you do have access to that observatory, but it can be challenging to know exactly how to interpret it and what to do with that. So that might be a good tool talk.
thank you. Yeah, we've had a basic manners talk just on why it's important, how to start start getting involved in manners, but this would be a more specific training, and I think that would be really useful. So these are some of the goals I put together, but now I have a lot more goals. Thank you all. Some of the goals I put together for 2024 is more proactive engagement from the community. So again, and I keep saying this, but it cannot just be me looking for issues with networks and then reaching out to you all. It needs to be a community. I think a lot of what these systems that we're talking about and the GREN, the value of the GREN and these systems is that we are a community and we can collaborate. And it's very challenging to be going to you all. I need you all to come to me, and I need help figuring out how to do that. So we will be putting a larger focus on manners and RPKI. I would like to do a community survey of RPKI implementation. Does anybody think that is, I think that would be useful, but if anyone has a strong opinion that it wouldn't be useful, that would be good to know here. And then I'm also looking for someone to champion that. So it came up yesterday in the network engineering session, who's implemented RPKI, and I don't think anybody raised their hand. Did anyone raise their hand? You guys have? Yeah. So I think what we're trying to glean from the survey is how far are you into the implementation and what's holding you, what's good, like what's working, and how can then, what's next?
Right. And maybe establish a definition for what implementation means too,
Correct.
because
Yeah.
that can be vague.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And then obviously a published set of best practices for the community. Again, I am looking for people to champion some of those best practice initiatives. I cannot do them all. So if there's anyone in this room interested in getting more heavily involved in the routing working group, I'm looking for that. So please let me know if you're interested. Also, and I'll go into this later, but if you're interested in joining the routing working group, please let me know.
Regarding the focus area manners and the RPKI, I also work for the manners for police ambassador as well and the trainer and the previous, right? And during that time, before the December 2020, right? We started miners activity in December, right? In our country as well, with help of EPINIC and the others like local NOC as well. We schedule a multiple session with the operators as well, right? The now it's like the adoption rate is almost like more than 90%. It's drastically changed, right? The part is like the ROA is absolutely right. They follow it, but the RPKI part is still is missing. That means my recommendations for that is like, I think we need to prepare some set of lab for the different community so that they will like a practice special for the RPKI, and it will be like a more easy for them to like adopt it as well, right? Just only doing some awareness training may not be impact, right? If you want to make a more impact on that, then I think the better way is to like host a server in locally and the regularly practice for the RPKI. Then the operators will more like familiar with the RPKI part, and they will also join and they will do the RPKI things. That will be like the best way.
That's a great idea. I think that would be challenging to find someone to host those things, but I think that's a really great idea. Does anybody in this room have any ideas for things that we should be focusing on for 2024 that I haven't mentioned? Obviously, we'll still continue to try to find cases and work on cases. But I'm really trying, like I said, I'm going to mention this a bunch of times, but I'm really trying to get you all to come to me versus me going out to you. So what can do you all have any ideas of goals for 2024 that could make that possible? A no is fine. Okay. Well, if you come up with any ideas or want to help me with this initiative, please come talk to me. Again, some potential tool talks that we came up with, and I already asked this question, but update on manners, continued engagements with RIPE Atlas. Please do go talk to him about RIPE Atlas probes if your network does not have one. We're working on a RIPE Atlas dashboard for R&E. We're going to follow up with that initiative. How do we contribute? And hosting an RP or a RIPE Atlas probe. We're going to do route views, some more things on route views, as was mentioned, route views looking glass, how to contribute, trainings for how to use it, things like that. Tool talks, some other tool talks that have been mentioned are Artemis and BGP Alerter. I don't know if there's anyone specifically interested in those in this room, but James? Yeah, we've had a few trainings with that, but so we'll continue that partnership, but that's a good one. I will add that.
I was kind of thinking, came up in my mind was the NLog ring. So it's a ring server for the, but I don't know, not many of the elements have joined them. So I'm kind of rather want to hear in this room opinion on that. So not so many elements are joining, even though it's started in the Euro or US.
Does anyone have any comments on that?
I think a lot of the organizations I've dealt with on that one, there's a barrier that's too much work sometimes. It's not much, but it's complex. And so I would just throw out there the direction that I'm familiar with has been encouraging people to add hardware to the national research platform. It's in the US, but there's nodes throughout the globe. And it's kind of like an easy button that provides some research capabilities, but then for network researchers or network engineers, it gives them an easy way to do tests from the network. And so I can provide more information on that, but it's a funded project where the box participates in a cluster, and you can launch a container and then be able to do the tests that you would typically do with Ring. And so it's even easier because you just throw it outside the network protections and let it just be wild and not have to worry about all the other which opens up another can of worms, but it's been a good process.
There is the Asia Pacific Research Platform sessions this afternoon that we'll talk a little bit about NRP, because it's essentially a similar, it's what?
Netherlands no bring.
Oh, okay.
I think that would be the different project. So
yeah, he's proposing an alternative sort of idea. And if anyone's more interested in learning a little bit more about that, there is the Asia Pacific Research Platform sessions this afternoon that could be of interest to you all if you don't know what he's referring to. NRP might be something that the group might be interested in too. And then, as I said, no one person or organization can solve these issues alone. And for those of you who know me, I'm doing a lot in this community, and I have a lot of, and I'm really working on a lot of these initiatives, but I need help. And we have 2 members of the routing working group chairs that are from Indiana University. And I would like to see if there's anyone in this community that would be interested in helping me chair the routing working group with Warwick Mitchell. And so, sort of get a little bit more diversity within the chairs of the routing working group. That would be incredibly helpful to me, and I need some fresh ideas. And so I'm looking for someone to, I think Thomas is being voluntold over here. So I'll keep you as an idea, Thomas. Is there anyone else interested in, taking a larger role in this group? Okay, that's fine.
Software, if some engineering, they need some tools to monitor their network, they can discuss the requirements with us, and we have some software engineer, they can develop any tools to help the community.
Okay.
Thanks.
So would those engineers be willing to get more involved in our group, or we I suppose we could just work on better ways to improve our collaboration across the 2 groups?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah, we do need to do that. Anyone else?
Maybe these already exist, Brenna, but would it be worth having the working group develop some operational principles or procedures for the chairs stepping up and stepping down? So it's something that's revisited every year. So there's sort of turnover in that space. The group has existed for 3 years?
This will be
Right.
the 3rd.
Right. And so you've been a chair for 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking it might be worth formalizing that process so that, you talked about people moving on and then there's no real continuity. I think a way to address that might be to have some formal written procedures for how the group operates. And even if it's the GNA, even if it's not aligned with the GNA, I think within APAN, I think you can do that yourself. I mean, I think you can just identify it and go with.
We have obviously documentation for how the group runs and how it was formed and things like that, but we don't have any documentation on, sort of terms or changing of leadership. So I think that's a really good idea. Yeah. Okay. So are there any more? I want to make sure that we have an opportunity for final questions, or is there anything that you all would like to see from me? If you would like to join the routing working group and you're not in it, I will get you added. Since I know you already expressed your interest, I'll get you added. Is there anyone in this room that wants to be added? Please come see me or come get a business card or take a picture of this slide. We have a mailing list that we use. We also have a Slack instance in the APAN Slack. It's the channel is routing. We also have a website to add. So is there anything else that anyone would like to bring up before I sort of end this discussion about the routing working group? Oh, okay. That's a good, thank you. I didn't see that. Yeah, hold on. Let me put my. Okay, so For those of you, not all of you are signed into the Zoom, but James did put this little document together that I will send out to the routing working group and put in Slack. That is just a general ASNs in the routing working group session. So we can start to develop this list of ASNs for NRENs. Can you see that? Oh, I didn't even look. Well, yes, James. What I can do is get this sent out at least to the list and to the Slack, and maybe thank you, James, for doing this. This is actually super helpful. But does anyone just want to like ad hoc add to this while I'm standing here? No, he should not. Then I will ask the group here in this room, how many of you run a RIPE Atlas probe? What? Currently. I see some opportunity in this room to to go talk to him about those probes and talk to him about getting those installed. For those of you that don't know, who want more information about RIPE Atlas, we did do a training with them, and I couldn't get that. For those of you in the routing working group, I can get that information sent out to you as well, or come up to me and I'll send you the link to some of the trainings we did with them that will help you understand what the program is and how to install your probes and what to do with them once they're configured. Anything else? Thank you. I really want to say thank you for participating in this discussion. Oh.
I'm trying to, in some cases, I got the message that meeting started very soon, but I have like other obligation that I'm not able to attend, but if I know that the schedule will be in advance, then I will try to do the your further meeting.
And I've asked this question a few times today, but what's the best way to do that? Currently, I'm sending out calendar invites to the entire list. Each time there is a meeting, usually 2 meetings at a time. So I'll do the morning one for the US and the night for the next 2 months. I don't know, some people love calendar invites, some people hate them. I could also just do it that way and then also publish it on the GNAG website if that seems like maybe the best way to do it. Okay, I'll take that under. So yeah, I'm working on, I wanted to have this meeting, really figure out what came from the discussion, and then I will be scheduling, I'm hoping to schedule the next 3, 4 to possibly 6 months out next week as a result of some of the discussions that we had, and try to get some tool talks scheduled. So I will do that. Ooh, thank you, James. Yeah, and again, I want to thank everybody who participated in this discussion. I'm really trying to determine what's next for this group and what's best for the community, and it's hard to do that without community impact. So, I really appreciate those of you that contributed, and please don't hesitate if you're in the routing working group Slack, or email me if you have other ideas that you come up with as you're sitting here at APAN. I'll be around until Friday if you want to have further discussions about anything that came up today. I think the NREN community stands out from some of the other communities I've been in, because most of the people in this community, I think, care deeply about the initiatives, about science, about supporting these networks. And I think it's really important as a community that we continue to support each other and use this community effectively. And I'm really happy that you all participated in this discussion with me. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions or want to discuss anything further. And please do fill out this spreadsheet, because it will really help us with the RIPE Atlas probes. Is the spreadsheet working? Oh, snap. Yeah, please talk to him about the, I'm not going to force them, but James might force you. But please talk to him further about the right path list probes. It will really help us with some of the things we're trying to do this year with the dashboard. And it's in a really amazing program, and it is, and we'll be having a couple trainings for later this year about our initiatives with them. So thank you all. Find me if you need me. And thank you all. Have a great APAN.